This is the Hype Squad with Charlie McConnell, a podcast where women can be full of themselves and brag about what they're good at. Each week, we're going to bring you conversations covering topics like motherhood, life, relationships, business, and everything in between, because anything is possible with your very own Hype Squad. Welcome back to the Hype Squad. Thanks for being here. Well, Jasmine and Rachel are back because we never left. We recorded a podcast earlier, and we're going to keep talking because there are more topics we want to do, and this will just come out, at a later time. But Jasmine and I were talking the other day. We were talking about podcast conversations that would be good to have. And one of the things I see come up all the time with clients is the confusion around, are we exclusive? Are we boyfriend, girlfriend? Are we serious? Are we casual? Are we seeing other people? Like the parameters of the relationship where it's like there's so many options, and like being on the same page, and like being exclusive, you would think means the same thing to everyone, but it doesn't always, or being boyfriend and girlfriend. So I think that this is something good for women your age and women my age. So, and also there's like this whole other thing where sex is not on the table the way it used to be sometimes. Like celibacy is like a much bigger thing now where women are not having sex at all. It's not necessarily that they're saving themselves for marriage, but they're like saving themselves until a certain point of seriousness in a relationship, right? Because either they got burned, it's like they're not necessarily virgins, they've just decided not to have sex anymore because it complicates a lot of things. And so I thought it would be a good conversation to have with you girls. So share what you're comfortable sharing, friends, stories, whatever, and we'll kind of go from here. But what has been your experience like that you would want to share with your friends or anything that kind of pertains to this topic? Like dating, qualifying what the relationship is, like how does that work? Rachel?
It's a great question. I have a harder time finding those parameters because I don't like to ask uncomfortable questions.
Okay.
Or be in uncomfortable situations. So like I will just leave it and be like, this is what I'm assuming that this is.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about assuming, all that jazz. So normally I get burned because I'm assuming that something is one thing and it's very much not that way. But yeah, I have a harder time telling you like where I am in a relationship or what my title is because I don't ask. I don't know.
Have you ever been with someone who wasn't uncomfortable having that conversation and would start it for you?
I have not,
That's
but
fair.
on the hunt.
On the hunt.
On the prowl.
Jobs open, jobs available. Jasmine, what about you?
I'm the same as Rachel, where I think for me it's a little bit different because I'm someone who is very rigid, I guess. And my brain doesn't do well with not being able to I guess compartmentalize stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So if I don't know what's happening, I feel uncomfortable. So for me, it's more so something where it's like I've moved to the point where I just consider you a friend until it's spoken about that we're not friends.
Okay.
I don't like assuming things because I feel like Rachel said, assuming things is kind of how you end up either getting burned or looking stupid or your feelings end up getting messed up. So the place that I've moved to is that unless you bring up the conversation, if someone asks me, you're my friend.
So that's interesting.
We're polar opposites there.
Okay. I want to dig into this because for Rachel, when you're making assumptions about what the relationship is it what you're wanting it to be, or is it reading the cues on like, okay, well, he's spending this much time with me, so he obviously we're together and he's obviously doesn't have enough time to see anybody else, so we're not seeing other people. Like, are you more of like super optimistic, this feels good, he obviously feels it, whereas I'm hearing you're like, we're just friends until we're not?
Yeah.
More, a little bit more guarded, I would say, which is not a bad thing. What is that?
Yeah, I would say that I don't guard myself at all. I'm very forward thinking, very optimistic in relationships. I get lost in like the fantasy of it, which is a big thing for me. Like I'll daydream in my own head and like progress it way further than it is ever. Because I'm like so caught up in the excitement of it, the
Sure.
fantasy, and what it could be one day, when I should just be like focusing on what it is right now.
Right. Do you ever feel like that?
I do, and then I snap out of it.
How do
I
you
think
snap out of it?
the minute I like start to feel myself going too far off the deep end, I like kind of snap back to reality a little bit, because I feel like, to be honest with you, and this is how I've always kind of felt, and my mom kind of told me the same thing, is that I think that with myself, I noticed, especially when I was younger, I put so much pressure on it, and I got so wrapped up in it so quick, and I realized that, like, if it hasn't been shown to you yet, that's not what this is.
Mm,
So I'm someone who almost is like, if you don't verbally confirm for me, this is what we're doing, this is how we're doing it, this is what I want, then you're not really going to get that out of me, if I'm being 100% honest with you.
that is a major flex to be able to do at 22 years old. Like, I just want to call that out for a minute. And good for your mom and good for you for like getting to that place and her like instilling that in you, because that's shit that 50-year-old women don't know how to do.
Well, I will say though, it was not something I developed on my own.
Sure.
It was something that came out of me getting my feelings hurt because
Mhm.
I made assumptions. And I think that really, I know this is so bad. If you are talking to a guy, I don't really advocate for having close male friends. I don't typically have a
Mhm.
lot in common with guys. But if you ever want to see how a man feels, stop talking to your girlfriends about it. I feel like you need to talk to a man about it, because I think that the way that we process things is different. And I feel like when I was younger, right, I would just talk to my girlfriends
Mhm.
and they would tell me, "Oh my gosh, no, you guys are going to get married." No, that's not what's happening. Like,
Rachel is that friend.
okay, there's
Me.
nothing
There's something great about it.
there's
Yeah.
nothing
Yeah.
wrong with being that friend, because something I will say I think I tend to lack balance, right? Where
Mhm.
I'm so far on the other end of the spectrum where now it's like, unless you pretty much spell out what we're doing, I don't know, right?
Mhm.
And maybe it's something where I don't feel that attachment because I am so guarded, to the point where it's like, unless I just really, really start to like you, you're put into a category for me.
Sure.
So while I do think it's a beneficial thing to have, I also think that it doesn't work in certain situations, because I've also had situations with several guys where they feel like I don't like them, even though
Mhm.
I do. So I
Mhm.
think there's a balance between being so optimistic and being so pessimistic, to the point where the guy's like, well, maybe she isn't worth my time because she's not giving me enough encouragement.
There is a sweet middle ground, and if we ever find what it is, we'll bottle it up and sell it.
Share it for the world.
But I want to go back to what you said about asking men's opinions,
Mhm.
because I think that that's very insightful and a really good idea. But like, who do you go to? Like, if you don't have a lot of male friends, like where do you go?
Honestly, so if you don't have a lot of male friends, right? Because I understand that, especially when you're in college, it's not easy to be friends with men
Mm-hmm.
because their minds are in different places. The one person who will probably give you the raw, uncut truth about what is happening is your mother. If you have a good relationship with your mom, I'll say that. I understand that, that's not necessarily everyone's experience. If I am in a situation where I don't want to talk to a guy about something, I'm calling my mom. Because A, she's older than me. She's talked to way more guys than I have. But also, I think that you need someone who's not afraid to call you out on your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've been in situations where I'm spiraling before, and my mom was like, "Can I tell you something? You're wrong." None of my friends who have my perspective and are my age are going to sit there and tell me that, because 9 times out of 10, I think that as women, we tend to feed off of each other, right? So it's like, if Rachel were to come in one day and tell us, "Yeah, this guy sucks so bad," we're all going to dogpile
That guy.
that guy. You never need to talk to him
Get out of
again.
here. He's
And I think that
garbage.
it's the tendency to like dogpile,
Yeah.
Whereas if I were to sit here and like call my mom, she'd be like, "Well, can you take a step back from the situation and look at it for what it is, as opposed to what you think it is," right? And she's not going to sit here and tell me what I want to hear. She's going to tell me what I need to hear. So I would say that if you don't have a male friend, you don't necessarily have to go to your mom. Go to someone who's going to give you the cut and dry truth and be blunt about it. Don't go to
That's
someone
the
who's going to lie
thing.
to you.
And I think not everyone is fortunate to have either their mom or sister or friend that they can go to, but it's imperative to have those type of people in your life who are not like the people who are constantly blowing smoke up your skirt and like filling you up and like, oh, yes, 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 everything's great. Well, I need someone who's going to talk to me real for a
Mhm.
second and like actually hear what I'm saying and not be like la 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 la.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's definitely a middle ground. There's definitely something to having perspective on how you're acting. Who do you talk to about stuff with guys?
I have a friend who's that cut version who
Mhm.
will,
Okay,
and
good.
sometimes I don't, I will specifically not talk to them, or I won't call my mom because my mom will do
Mhm.
the same thing because I know I don't want to hear it. Like I
Mhm.
will withhold information, and well, I haven't called my mom in a little bit. Thanks, love you, mom. Um,
Can't talk to you, Ellen. I'm not allowed to talk to you.
Ellen's like, why haven't you been calling me? And I'm like, because I don't want your advice
You're gonna
right
ask me
now.
questions, and I'm not open to that. Well, so I've said to lots of women in my life, clients and friends and otherwise, is there's a time and a place for talking to your friends about your
Mhm.
romantic life. And when you're in the early stages, it's great. It's all fun and games because you're seeing people. The problem is if you overshare things because we all have that like dog piling mentality, like, and I did the same thing with my mom. Like, I remember early on in Colby and I's relationship, I would not tell my mom about any disagreements because she would hold that against him. Right, he wronged me, or I
Yeah.
mean, she would give me a little bit of like what you're saying your mom's
Mhm.
perspective was, but it's like ride or die for my kids, for my mom. And so it was like if anyone does them wrong, and she was never going to hear the full story, right? She was
Mhm.
only going to hear my perspective, and depending on the timing, she's going to hear it raw, right? Like
Yeah.
where I am still
Yeah.
really sensitive about it. The same thing goes with friends. And I've instilled the same rule with friends that like if Colby and I have any disagreements, I don't tell my friends because they're going to judge him. They're going to judge me. They're going to have opinions. They're going to give me their opinions when I don't really want them. And then they have like this sour, and and this is not to say that Colby and I fight all the time. That's not the case at all. But I learned that really early on that the people around you have a lot of impact on your thought process.
100%.
And so if you don't have this strong person, like if you were where you like, okay, let's say for instance, Rachel comes to you for advice and you have this more of a protective, guarded mentality. And so you're telling her to protect and guard herself. That's not her nature.
No.
She's going against what she would normally do. She knows in her intuition and her heart what she needs to do, whether it's going to screw her over or not.
Yeah.
It's what her body's telling her to do. And it's like, depending on who you're going to, the advice that they're giving you is more than likely not the advice you need to follow. Like your intuition's already telling you what to do, but it also can taint a really beautiful relationship
I was gonna
early
say
on.
that. Like, I remember when I was younger, I was talking to a guy. I told my friends everything.
Mm-hmm.
And based on what my friends told me, I would be mad at him over stuff he didn't even do.
Mm.
And I think that it's something where like men and women are so different. It's not easy to communicate. Everyone says the hardest thing in relationships is communication because everyone thinks differently, everyone processes things
Mm-hmm.
differently. And I was sitting there basically telling my friends stuff. It would be small stuff. And because my friends are so protective over me and they love me and stuff like that, I also think it's something where they would feel some type of way. But I also think something about that, you have to look at where your friends are too.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, if Rachel were to come in here and ask me for advice and I'm protected and guarded, and let's say I had just gotten like screwed over that weekend, I'm gonna tell her to drop him.
Yeah.
Even if it's not intentional on my part, even if I'm not trying to be bitter, even if I'm not trying to be mean and ruin what Rachel has, my perspective is going to leak into every type of advice like I give.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that in order for you to have a well-rounded perspective, you almost either need to A, ask multiple people, or B, communicate with the person. And I think that I've noticed with a lot of my friends, it's like you're calling me before you talk to him. Did you talk to him about how he feels about it? Because nine
Same
times out of
thing.
10, you don't even know what you're talking about. You're just assuming stuff.
Or do you even know how you feel about it before you
Mm-hmm.
start sharing it with people? Because
Yeah.
that's the thing too. Like if we feel burned or wronged, we want to vent, right? And we want to go vent to our girlfriends who are going to hype us up or egg us on or whatever it is. And you know what you're going to get from your friends, which is why you take certain things to certain friends, right? But instead of that, sitting with how it really makes you feel, like why are you angry? What are you mad at yourself because you allowed it to happen or the part you played in it? Is it really all him? Right? Because you have to give yourself time to process things and to see how you really feel about it, and then you can move forward. I had a client who was seeing a man she had met recently dating, and something big happened, like some drama, right? And her knee-jerk reaction was, I can't deal with this. I'm not dealing with this. And we had a coaching session right after it happened, and I said, hold on, let's zoom out, let's back up, let's look at it in black and white, because right now you're feeling wronged, but he had no control over this situation. And this was a guy you really, really liked. You've been on a couple of dates with him. There's so much potential. And now an outside circumstance you're judging him for, right? So let's back up. Let him speak for himself. Hear the story. Hear, like, instead of jumping to conclusions, as opposed to you haven't even met with a guy and drama starts showing up. In that case, I'd be like, this is not a great sign for this particular person. But with this situation, it was very different. And she zoomed out and she didn't tell anybody. She told no one except for me what had happened. And so she had no outside influence as to the drama, because it was enough drama that anyone in her life would have been like, run right now. But there's context to it, right? There's another human on the other side of this that has their own version of this story. And so depending on how you're feeling about the person as like a whole, you got to hear them out. You got to hear like their side of it and talk before you start. Like, there are only two people in a relationship.
Yeah.
And that's supposed to be like that for a reason. And if you start bringing a lot of outside influence into it, it's no longer just your relationship.
Yeah.
Everyone has an opinion, and it's everyone is contributing to it, and that's not fair.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Don't worry, people beating stuff up out there. I don't know what it is. Any stories that you guys would like to share about friends or people in your circle with dating?
With dating?
Crickets. If you're not watching the video, everyone is uncomfortable right now.
Great.
That's a no.
I'm not close with anybody who's like actively dating anybody right now.
Online dating, that's a big thing. It comes up a lot. That I have a lot of clients that are online dating. Do you feel like you're actually able to meet people like out in the world, or is everything off of a platform of some kind?
I've never tried online dating before.
But like even a social media platform.
Yes, like I think social media is one of those things where I think it has its benefits, of course, but also like for example, Instagram. I don't know if I love meeting guys through Instagram because you are seeing a very curated version of me. You're seeing what I post, the stories I do. Like when I took my birthday pictures, I posted for my birthday. Okay, I posted what, like 3, 4 photos. I think my friend and I took photos for about an hour and a half. And then I had to have my friend edit them. So it's like I would almost prefer to meet a guy in a setting like class or something where he can see me in a bit of a different form and see glimpses of my personality as opposed to just looks. I don't know if that makes sense.
I agree with that.
Okay.
I do, because I mean, I would think that most people would prefer the real version. One of the things I recommend with clients is like get on FaceTime as soon as possible when you're online dating, because it's the closest thing you're going to get in the safest way that you see their face and their mannerisms when they talk and the world around them and all of those things, right, that you don't get from talking on the phone or texting. It typically makes them very uncomfortable to do that, but it does make a big difference. But class, I'm just going to challenge this for a second. You're not in class. So, like, how would you meet people now?
That's a great question.
I'm online or or in like a bar. And
Yeah.
I don't really want to meet somebody in a bar either.
I
Right.
think
But
that's something too,
Yeah.
where it's like when you go out in college, okay, you always meet someone at the bar and they're like, I want to take you out on a date. And then it's like after 2 days, you like never hear from them again.
Yeah.
And it's very normal. But I know for me, I've met a couple of guys in class, but in terms of like where I've met most of the guys that I've had things with, it was when I was out. But then again, it's like, do I really want to talk to a man who I met at a bar?
I mean,
Um,
and that's why online dating is so popular, is because there aren't a lot of options. If you're going to work every day and it's not an inter-office romance, right? Because it's not people in that area,
mhm.
then you have to get out and you have to be more active in the community. You have to go to workout classes. But even then, it's like you don't know who's going to be there,
Oh,
right? Because
yeah.
most people are not out there doing stuff like that, right? Maybe a networking event, but if you get to that point, everyone's married, right? So that's why so many people online date, because people are busy. And it got so much negative stuff. And even now, people are like, I'm not going to date online. I'm going to meet somebody organically. Okay, call me when that happens, right? Like you go to work
Mhm.
8 to 5, you come home. If you have kids and you're divorced, you're with your kids. And then the weekend you're at birth. When the hell are you going to meet somebody?
Yeah.
And so I've had some clients before that were so hesitant to get online to date because they thought people were going to judge them. And I'm like, what's the goal here? Being cool in your friend's eyes or finding a partner that you can spend your life with, right? It's really the only way to do it now, which sucks.
Mhm.
No, it's fine. You meet them, you start dating them, you fall in love, and then you lie and tell everybody else a different story of how you
But
met.
see, I feel like I know lots of people that met and got married and met online. And it's like they want to share because it's like
Oh,
normalizing.
yeah, that's
Like
weird.
it's not a dirty little
I
secret,
know.
right? Um, yeah, I just think it needs to be like, just do it. Online date. It's not a big deal. As long as you're safe and you get on FaceTime and somebody can track your location and you have parameters in place, right?
Mhm.
I always have my friends track me.
But it's like it's a numbers game. And I've said a couple of times I'll do some episodes specifically about online dating, which this is a version of that, but like for the older girls who were like divorced and online dating, because it is a job in and of itself. And I haven't even online dated. It was not a thing when I was single. But having their perspective of like it's a numbers game. You have to talk to multiple
Mhm.
people at a time and you have to filter them out
Cannot
and
do
it's
that.
work.
I think that's the thing that's kind of turned me off from dating. I don't enjoy the game, if that makes sense.
But if you
Like,
have a goal, that's what you have to do. If you're like
yeah.
hungry to find somebody and you have to maximize your time,
Why is she
you
pointing at
could
me?
you could still get on there and you could still be like, I'm just going to be casual about this. I'll see if somebody like catches my eye, and I won't do a numbers game because you
Mhm.
don't have to do it that way. But that's the perspective of the people that I've worked with that want to get married again, that
Mhm.
have or don't have kids yet and want to have kids. That's another thing too. Like when you get to your mid 30s and you're like, shit, I thought I'd be married with kids now. You're on the hunt,
Mhm.
right? And so then it's like, I don't want to settle. I don't make excuses, but I'm still trying to find somebody. So there's varying degrees of it. Um, but yeah, it is the world we live in. It is.
That's fun.
Or you could hire a
Sometimes.
matchmaker to save up your money. You could hire a matchmaker. Maybe that will work.
Does that actually work? I don't know anyone who's actually done it before.
Um, it does work.
Really?
You gotta have money to pay
Mhm.
for the good ones. But yeah, I mean, they have like major matchmaking services in large cities, that like male or female, you go in there and you hire them and it's a dating profile and you do like uh kind of like a networking thing where you meet a couple, not really a networking thing, but you go on like mini dates and there's varying like ways of doing it. But yeah, but it's just a personal touch, whereas an
Mhm.
app is an algorithm.
And terrible ones because they specifically only show you people that you don't want so that you pay for versions where they might show
What?
you who you do want. Yeah.
What site does that?
I think I want to say like Bumble, but they're all owned by like the same people, but I think Bumble and Hinge
So you
are
get the
owned.
free version of matches,
Yeah, and it's like people you wouldn't be interested in.
or it's like this guy's really good, but his face is grayed out, and it's like upgrade to see this your French
But
star.
it's like yeah, they do that too. So they want you to pay for it, so then you're like more optimistic or whatever. So
They want to know you really want it.
yeah, well they just want
You're
money,
serious.
but
Yeah.
they'll throw you some hot ones.
How much are they?
I don't know.
Wow.
Never paid for them, but
Hmm. Well,
scroll on.
Okay. Well, any other stories to share? No? Okay. Okay.
I mean, we can.
It's fun.
know,
It's
sure.
cringy over here, guys. It's cringy.
Cheese.
Do we want to do a hype list specific about dating?
I don't have one. I'll give you one.
Yeah.
So my achievement very recently is that I've kind of stopped going into relationships with like a guarded mindset. I've been my weird self and I'm very like overly loving and overly everything pretty much. And I've stopped dimming that and
I love
just
that.
kind of like accepting whoever wants me is going to be okay with that and whoever doesn't and they think that's weird, but I'm just like, okay, bye.
I love that. I love that.
So,
I remember when Colby and I first started dating, and I never thought that like we'd end up getting married when we started dating, like at the very beginning. And I remember having a conversation. I'd had a bad breakup like a year before. And I kind of like what you're saying. I was like, I am no longer pretending like everything
yeah.
is okay. Like,
Mhm.
if something bothers me, I'm going to tell you. And if that makes you uncomfortable, suck it up or kick rocks, like, get out of here. Right. And I was so like, I don't know, assertive, bitchy, I could even say. Like, I was just like, this is how it's gonna go, mister, if you want to be a part of this, right? And he was like, okay. And then I held to it,
Yeah.
right? Then I
Yeah.
actually called out the shit. And I remember saying to a friend, at this point we were dating and I'd never lived with anybody before, or excuse me, we were living together and I'd never lived with anybody before. And I, I just remember telling her, I was like, well, I'll just tell him that something bothers me and then he stops. He stops doing it. What the actual hell? Like, oh my God. Like, I didn't have to tell him twice or three times. I said it one time and he didn't do it again. And I remember so vividly that being like, I was flabbergasted.
Yeah.
Like, it was not an argument. It was not a confrontation. It was just like a simple, like, could you not leave your shit all over the floor? Yeah, sure. And you pick it up. And I'm like, okay, this guy not going anywhere. Like, I'm
my
keeping him,
man.
right? Like, with a whole like thousand other things, but I had never experienced that before. I'd never experienced someone treating me like an equal or like feeling really validated in the things that bothered me and not having to. But I also went into it with the boundary of I'm not being submissive. Like, I am not bowing down and like acting like stuff doesn't bother me. And it worked. Now I can't
Yeah.
speak for like where he was mentally at the time, but like he wanted to settle down. He was a relationship guy. He wanted to be in a relationship. And so I was lucky in that he wasn't, the opposite of that, which was just like, we're just hanging out, we're just chilling, like
Going
everything's
with the
good.
flow.
And
Or
the root
something.
is good communication. The
Yeah.
root of all of that.
Yeah.
Well, but yeah, speaking up for yourself,
Yeah.
right? Like, yeah, and hopefully you get lucky and the other person knows how to communicate too. But also just being like your true self,
Yeah.
not pretending to be what you think they want you to be, because you have no idea what they want you to be.
I've had friends that have told me like, don't say that. Don't be too open there. And I'm like,
See,
I'm going
friends,
to. I don't care anymore.
quit telling them. Just do what
That's true.
feels good.
That's true.
All right. Anything else to add? Okay. All right. Thanks for being here. Thanks for getting hyped with us. This was a fun conversation. Thanks for being here, girls. And be kind to yourselves.